Hi, it's PJ and welcome to the video tutorial for the mask. So I've updated the instructions and I've put numbers on them so that it will be easier to follow along with the video. So we're going to start with number 1, cutting the parts. So you've got on your instructions, it will have the sizes to cut your parts. So you've got your 2 main pieces and I'm laying them up right sides together so they'll be ready to sew. And then I also have my lining pieces, and I've basically measured 2 1/4 inches in from the right hand side and then lined up my lining pieces here. So the reason for this is when you put your pattern on, you can cut all 4 layers at one time. Just line up this edge, the edge of the pattern to here, and the edge of your lining to where it says cut for the lining. And then you can just pin that into place and cut that out. You're also going to want to cut your facing pieces, and the sizes are with the pattern. You can just cut those with a rotary cutter, ruler, and mat as well. You don't really need the pattern. I'm going to cut those out. I'll be right back. So you've got all of your pieces cut out, your 2 main pieces, your outer pieces, and your 2 linings, and then also 2 facing pieces. So we're going to sew these together. We're going to sew the curve seam here. You can do this either with a serger or a sewing machine. Either will work. And I forgot to mention as well, your pattern already has the seam allowances in it, so you don't have to add anything to that. I'm going to go stitch these curve seams and I'll be back. Here are your lining piece and your outer piece. I did one on the serger and one on a regular sewing machine just so that you can see that either will work. The next step is to do the edge stitching. The edge stitching is just going to help the seam stay in place when these are laundered. So I just push the seam to one side and then we'll just edge stitch down here. Gonna go do that. I'll be right back. Step 3, the edging. So after you sew your seams with just a regular sewing machine, not a serger, you're just going to edge stitch down your seam to put the seam allowances to one side. So you can use just a regular straight stitch, or on this one I used, let me see if I can get that kind of a close-up. I used just a wide long zigzag, and it will just hold the seam down really nice. And the added bonus is nobody can tell if you're sewing straight. All right, so I did the same thing on the lining, so outer and lining. And then I also, on the serger, I just finished off the edges of the lining. If you don't have a serger, you could just zigzag this. If you have a straight machine only, you could simply just turn this under and stitch it down, just so that the edge isn't raw. Okay, so you have your sewn or serged seam. I just open this up. I'm hoping you can see this on the camera. And I just kind of put my finger inside and run my nail along the seam, and which is basically finger pressing, and it's moving the seam to one side and helping that to open up. So then I'm going to try to keep my hand flat so that you can see this on the camera. You just open this out and stitch, and you have to gently hold this open while you're stitching. When you get to the flat part or the really curved part, you just have to go slow and do a few inches at a time and then move it. I'm using, this is kind of sewing by braille. I'm just making sure the seam is still to the side. And there's your stitch seam. Step number 5, putting this all together. So you're going to put your lining piece and your outer piece together, and you want the seams to be going in opposite directions. So I'm just going to flip this. Let me get this where you can actually see it. So one of my seams is going to the left and one is going to the right. And you're just going to nestle the seam allowance together. It will help reduce the bulk right there. That's the part that's going to go at your nose. So I'm just going to put a clip in here. I'm going to match up the other side. And I'll put a little clip in there. And you're going to have what looks like this. So now this is where your facing pieces come in. You're going to take your facing pieces and just line them up with the end. Depending on the size that you're doing, right here it might not all match up. Can you see that right there? Don't worry about that. It'll all get caught in the seam. So I'm just going to clip this into place, and then I'm going to go sew that seam, and I'm going to do the top and the bottom all along here and along here. We're not closing up the ends. So I'm going to go stitch that, and again, you can do it with a serger or just your regular sewing machine. I'll be right back. I've sewn the top seam and the bottom seam, and we're ready for step number 6, which is the turning and the pressing. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to turn these little facing ends, and they're not very big, so it's really easy to do. Oops, sorry. I guess I could stay in camera. So you're just going to turn that and turn this. So it's going to look like that. Then you're going to turn the lining. And you're going to have something that looks like this. I like to finger press. Whoops, I have a little thread tail in there. I like to press the seams just with my finger to one side. It makes it open up much nicer when you try to actually lay it flat. So I just run my fingernail along the seam with the seam to one side. And then when you go to press it open, it'll press open much nicer. So I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side, and then I'm going to take it to the iron and press it flat. And I'll be right back. So I've edge stitched along the top and along the bottom. And again, I used the wavy stitch, long skinny zigzag. And then I've serged off both ends. Again, if you don't have a serger, you could just zigzag that. You just want to, it's going to get tucked in a minute here. So now we are on to step 8, the casing and the elastic. So you can mark in 1 1/4 inches on each end, or you can basically just fold this in. The way that the pattern is set up, if you fold on that line, this just tucks in underneath about 1/4 inch. So that's going to be your casing. So to make this easy so that you don't have to string your elastic, if you just place your elastic in here at the fold before you do your stitching, you won't have to string it in after the fact. So just tuck that underneath. And then with just a regular straight stitch machine, I'm just going to stitch down here, not catching the lining. So basically I'm just going to stitch right down there. Okay, be right back. I've sewn down here to form the casing. You can see right there. And then I tied my knot. You can just, then the casing is pretty wide, so after you get your knot tied, you can just pull your knot into the inside to make it look a little more tidy if you'd like. Like that. Okay, so basically that's the mask. If you don't want to do the additional filter, you are all done. If you'd like to do the additional filter, here's the information on that. So this is a HEPA filter vacuum bag, and this is what it looks like when it comes out of the package. Basically, I just cut that apart carefully at the seams and ended up with a big chunk like this. I peeled off the little plastic container thing, the vacuum connector. And then I took my pattern and I just folded this and then cut out. And you end up with this. So to get this into your mask, I just folded it in half. You could probably kind of fold this down and then fold this in half. And you're just going to slide it in from the side on one side and then kind of reach in through to the other side and pull it through. And then you have to kind of feel in there and open it out. And you just basically want to make sure that you get the top up to the top and the bottom to the bottom. Since the filter is actually flat and your mask is curved, once you get it in there, you kind of have to just position it through there, but there you go. And there's your mask, all complete. Ta-da. Okay, so if you're going to be making a ton of these, I've done this lovely little diagram. And let me bring this up so you can see it a little bit better. Instead of doing the cutting that I showed you initially, if you want to do long strips and cut the outer part individually and the lining separately, you'll be able to get a lot more usage. You'll get better usage of your fabric because you can flip-flop your parts, as you can see here. And on the lining piece, I found that I got the best usage if I just measured from the lining line to the edge and made my strip that width. And then again, just alternated them through. So that will save you a lot of fabric if you're going to make a lot of these. And this is I used 43 inches. Most fabric is not actually 44, 45 anymore. It's usually 43. So, and this is the largest size. And I was able to get 7 on there. So, just some tips if you're going to make multiples. And then also, if you want to conserve elastic, you can do this little trick. And I just used a short piece of elastic, about 4 inches, and then 2 4-inch pieces of ribbon. And I just zigzagged the ribbon to the elastic ends. So you could feed this through, you could knot the ribbon end, but you would still have a little bit of comfort and adjustability here. If you are out of elastic, you could use that exact same pattern and simply just stitch either ribbons or fabric strips to the edges. So here's another way to do ties on your mask. You don't have to construct your mask any differently than you did before. So here's your mask with your little casings. This is a cord lock. If you're not familiar with cord locks, see if I can do this. You just push in and add your cord. And this is just 45 inches of 1/2-inch twill tape. So what makes this process really easy is if you use OESD's Alligator Clamps. So this is the package, and these are the clamps. Let's see if I can bring this up here so that you can see. So what's nice about these is this part doesn't move. Only this very end moves. Can you see that when I open and close? So you can stick this in here, open this end, grab your twill tape and pull it through. And I just pull both sides through like that. So now you've got a loop and you've got 2 ends. There's your 2 ends. So then you can use the same alligator clamp, and I just open up my cord lock and stick this through. And then you can grab your ends, squeeze your cord lock, and pull through. It's the easiest way that I have found to thread cord locks. And then just tie a knot in your ends. I usually take a pair of pinking shears and just trim off the end so it doesn't ravel. Okay, if you don't have a cord lock, this is just a pony bead. And this is just a strip that I made on the sewing machine if you don't have any twill tape. And it will basically serve the same purpose. And you can thread it the same way. And then just tie the knot so the cord lock doesn't come off. Okay. To put this mask on, you're welcome to laugh at this part, but this is the only head that I had. So, here's your head. Okay. You're going to hold the mask this way. Put the loop over your head. Basically, this will sit at the base of your neck. And then you can bring the mask up. And then just tighten the cord lock. And there's your mask. Mask is a little bit big for my model here. There we go. Okay, I think that's about it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Thanks, bye.